Story 1. The man in the park. Anna always took the same route home from her evening shifts. The park was dimly lit, but it shaved 10 minutes off her walk, so she took the risk. For weeks, she had an eerie feeling that she was being watched. Then, one night, she heard footsteps behind her, slow, deliberate, and always stopping when she did. She quickened her pace, heart hammering, but the footsteps followed. She turned around, and in the flickering glow of a distant street lamp, she saw him, a tall man in a dark hoodie, just standing there, watching. She ran the rest of the way home and bolted her door. But that was only the beginning. Notes started appearing on her doorstep. "You look beautiful when you run." The police were called, but they couldn't do much without evidence of a crime. Weeks passed, and the man in the hoodie seemed to vanish. Anna thought it was over until she received a package in the mail. Inside was a picture of her sleeping, taken from her bedroom window. That night, she heard a noise outside and peeked through the blinds. A man was standing in her yard, staring up at her window. She screamed and called 911. This time, the police caught him trying to break in. He had been living in an abandoned house down the street, watching her every move. Story 2. The silent caller, Sarah, had just moved into her new apartment when the phone calls began. At first, it was just breathing, heavy and slow. Then, a voice whispered, "I see you." She dismissed it as a prank, but the calls kept coming, always at night. The voice knew details about her life, what she was wearing, what she had for dinner. She changed her number, but it didn't stop. One night, she unplugged her landline, thinking it would end the torment. But at 2 a.m., her cell phone rang. "You can't hide from me," the voice said. Terrified, she called the police, but they told her they couldn't trace the number. It was coming from a disposable phone. Weeks of paranoia followed until she installed security cameras. The next day, she checked the footage and felt her blood turn to ice. The calls had been coming from inside her building. Sarah moved out immediately. The stalker was never caught, but the calls stopped until 1 year later when she received a final message. "Miss me?" Story 3. The shadow in the basement. James had always dismissed his sister Emily's fears as paranoia. She claimed someone was watching her, but no one else ever saw anything. Then, one evening, Emily went missing. The police searched everywhere. Her apartment showed no signs of forced entry, no struggle. But then James remembered something. Emily had always complained about strange noises coming from the basement of her building. He convinced the police to search there, and what they found was horrifying. In the dark, moldy basement, behind a stack of old furniture, was a hidden crawl space. Inside, they found Emily's phone, purse, and a mattress. Someone had been living there. Further investigation revealed a tunnel leading to a hidden door that opened right into Emily's closet. Emily was never found, but her neighbor, a quiet, unassuming man named Henry, was arrested when police discovered photos of her in his apartment, photos taken through the peephole of her front door. Story 4. The stranger on the subway. Melissa was used to commuting late at night. The subway was mostly empty, just a few tired passengers dozing off. But then she noticed him, a man in a black coat, staring at her from the opposite end of the train. At first, she thought she was imagining it. But every time she glanced up, his eyes were locked onto her. When she got off at her stop, so did he. She deliberately walked to a coffee shop, waiting to see if he followed. He did. Panicked, she ducked into a restroom and called her friend to come get her. She waited, heart pounding, but when she came out, the man was gone. Relieved, she went home, thinking it was over. That night, she received a message on social media. "Why did you run?" It was from a blank profile, but the location tag was chilling. It was from right outside her building. Story 5. The photographer. Lena loved photography. She often wandered the city, capturing candid moments of strangers. One day, she noticed a man in multiple shots, always in the background, always watching her. At first, she thought it was a coincidence, until she developed photos from a different day and saw him again. Curious, she zoomed in and noticed something that made her stomach drop. The man wasn't just in the background, he was taking pictures of her too. Then the emails started arriving, photos of her taken from behind, from across the street, from outside her window. "You are my favorite subject." One message read. Terrified, she reported it to the police, but they couldn't do much without knowing who he was. One night, she returned home to find her apartment door slightly ajar. Inside, everything looked normal except for one thing. On her bed was a stack of printed photos. Every single one was of her sleeping. The police took it seriously this time. They found hidden cameras in her apartment. The stalker? A man who had worked at the photo lab she used. He had been following her for months,